Hello and welcome to another episode of Leisurely Baatein. My guest today is a person who has been able to listen to his inner calling, leaving a successful career in global consulting to become a successful chef. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Chef Skylar. Chef Skylar, welcome to Leisurely Baatein. How are you doing?
Welcome, Subhadip.
Chef, the first question which I wanted to start off with is, if you could share with our audience a bit about yourself, your early years, where you grew up, and and your journey to the United States of America.
So I grew up in New Delhi, and I did my electrical engineering from Manipal. And then I worked for a few years in ABB in power engineering, which was actually very unfulfilling because it's a dead-end job. Power engineering in India, it just takes a long time, any power project.
Right.
And so I'm like, I want to do something more human. And so I actually I went for a master's of science in bioengineering in the US, and which was to me, from a power engineering to bioengineering, that's a good jump because that's more human, that brings me closer to humanity. And sure enough, after the 2 years in master's, I got a job locally in Ohio as a software engineer working in artificial intelligence and machine learning. At the time in early 2000s, I should say. Before I decided I wanted to travel, and I got a job in Accenture, then subsequently in PwC, EY, short stints there. And so ultimately I became like the technologist, building online websites, mobile apps, traveling across the globe, and of course my deep engineering background as a technologist was all everywhere. I would go to Greek. I'd have teams over there in India. How the distributed world, corporate world is,
Right.
And to me that was it's pretty good. But again, it's like a rat race, there is an inner calling that I am heeding to, and I want to make sure that I heed to at that time because, after all, we have only one life to live. So.
Right. So true. Good. And how did you discover your passion for food, and what really prompted you? What was that moment or that trigger of inspiration where you decided that no more global consulting? Now let me get into the world of food and become a chef.
Yeah. So I think there were just let me think about it. I think there were multiple factors that were going on. Okay. So while I was, traveling, I went to Greece or, I was traveling across the United States. I was obviously, we would take clients out and we would take the teams out to eat. So I always had a chance to find the most remote mom and pop authentic restaurant local to that cuisine, and I would go there and I'll have food. Not many
Right.
people would go, but I would. And so I over the years became very exposed to all these different cuisines and all the mom and pop restaurants and all this exotic food that people are obviously making. And then obviously I like them so much as, I've grown in India, grown in Delhi, and we have a very rich food culture, right? And, from a Punjabi Indian family. So I would come back and I would what, I really want to try that barbecue, which I had in North Carolina, or I really want to try that Sikh kebab that I had from that vendor on that street, like the Nizams in New Delhi, and coming in the US, so I've been in the US for almost 20 years. So I tried, emulating those at home, I would do the Google search, I'll figure things out, spices, meat. And then of course, when I'm making all of it, I can't just eat by myself, right? So we would have friends come over, and then I would feed them. And then subsequently what happens, that I was doing that. I quite found myself as a repetitive pattern doing that all the time, right? I mean, wherever I would go outside of my day job, I would first go explore what the food is, learn from the chef, come back. And then when I would come back at home, I'm going to try to emulate that, right? And so to give you an example, we don't get the authentic butter chicken out here because a lot of Indians out here are from Eastern India or so Western and South India, and then they're making the chicken tikka masala. But not the butter chicken that I had in Minar or Moti Mel Deluxe or Pandara, or like my friends from Delhi would probably appreciate that more. And I'm like, I want to have that butter chicken. Everything is good. I want to have the dhori seekh or the, chicken tikka kebabs and all that. And so I wanted to try them for myself because I was missing them, and that's how I started. But when I started, and then I started feeding my friends because, my friends would come. And then once what happened, there are two aha moments you actually talked about. What's the moment you realized? I actually made 100 and plus different kebabs, like 100 plus different pieces of kebabs as a home chef. I was really practicing. So we made Haryali kebab, Tandoori kebab, and we made the Afghani kebab at home, and I made 100 plus. And I had invited these three families, and guess what? All my friends, they all ate it without feeding their children. And I just kept on making them, and they kept on eating without realizing that they got to feed their children. And even I had my friends' parents, generally parents are like older, so they tend to be vegetarian. And so the aunties had come, and even they ate the chicken. It's like so delicious. And then suddenly when the children were playing outside, they came in and they're like, where's our share? I'm like, oops, we are out. And then they started scolding me. They're like, oh, you shouldn't have made it so delicious, And then I made a chola bhatura once for one of my friends' puja ceremony out there. And it was the authentic Indian Delhi Halwai style chola bhatura that you get on the streets of Lajpat Nagar or Kailash Colony or Birda Colony. It was the most authentic that I could make. And it turned out well. I literally had children eating it and scolding their moms. And I'm not exaggerating. Why are you not making this at home so delicious? And it was literally at that time I was like, wait a minute, I'm on to something out here, and at that point I had been cooking now for almost 10 plus years and everything. And it's the families that I'm feeding who are, the children. We want to eat it, and they're scolding their moms, and their moms are trying to cut a sorry figure. Oops, we don't know how to make that, obviously. So then obviously the orders started flowing in. People started asking me, hey, we had your chola bhatura at that, at Yat friend's house at that puja. Can you make this for us as well? You know what I'm saying? So I made that. I made the butter chicken or the Haryali chicken, Haryali tikka kebab, right? So I kept on making them, and that's how I kind of got into. So when people started paying for my food, that's when it was like, okay, you know what? This is probably something that I should think about seriously if I want. It's now no longer a hobby. And it's my passion, but now I'm should I convert it into a profession? So from a corporate perspective, I was at a point where I was like, okay, I can either become a CXO, CEO, because I was almost nearing the CTO level, and I'm like, I can go up the ladder, or I can actually pursue my passion. And I had a list of 100 plus families who were already buying some food from me in some fashion. And that's the moment where I said, you know what, I have paying customers. I think I know how to cook because people are willing to pay for my food.
Right.
And I think that's what led me to make that transition from let's take the jump, let's live the American dream, let's get on it.
That's very exciting, very very exhilarating, the way you explained it. But still, there are times when you have to leave your comfort. In a high-paying job, there are potentially social barriers or social stigmas in the mind. What was your thinking around that time? Or did you even have that kind of a thought?
No, I think I even have it sometimes today. I mean, even now that I'm fast-forward so many years, I think that, the first was, okay, I'm going to quit my job. I will immediately not have a steady stream of a lot of money that I earn at senior director, vice president level, and here I am going to be left on my own vices and my own life. Now I'm going to be just by myself, right? And outside of my own friend circle, who's going to buy it, right? So it was so, and when I was in Capital One, they talked about burning the ships analogy. And the reason how, and what they talked about was that Alexander the Great was able to win with so few people against so big armies is because whenever they would go in a new land, they would burn those ships so that the soldiers had no way but to go forward and either fight and win or fight and die. So to me, it was a very inspirational, like, okay, you know what, am I in it or am I not in it, right? And then, of course, like when I look back my 5, 10, 20 years, and I was like, when I first started engineering, I didn't know that I was going to get a job in ABB or Accenture. And all I knew was I had to keep my head down, keep working, be persistent, persevere in the worst of the times, and I will come out strong, right? So those qualities, those traits, if anything, were like, I have built those. So I'm like, I have a test customer out here, people, they may be your best friends, but believe me, they love their money more than they love you. And in some cases, they love their money more than they love their loved ones. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, if people are willing to pay for my food, if there are kids who are scolding their mom, then literally they were like, why are you not making this, right? I am like, if I ever wanted to do it, now is the time. And so I talked to my wife. And at the time, in Accenture, I was like, and this was in December in one of the years, and I looked at my hotel sheet and I had 265 nights. In that year, I traveled on the road. So think of it, 3 out of 365 days, 265 nights, I'm away. So my wife is like, it's either your consultant life or your wife. You kind of figure this out. And so to me, it was a lot of those factors. I'm like, you know what? Okay, let's just make sure that next for the 1 or 2 years, we're going to hunker down. We're going to cut down our expenses. We're not going to go out. We got rid of the cable and everything. We came scaled back. We had 2 cars and we got rid of 1 car so that we didn't want to have a car payment. So that we reduced our costs so that we could comfortably live, because for us, comfort was more important than flashing all these riches and all that. And so I'm like, okay, let me focus on this for 1 year, 1.5 years, and let's see where it goes, right? Yeah. I do not want to have a regret later in my life that I never gave it a try, you know what I'm saying? So was it tough? Absolutely. But it was a calculated risk that I took, and over the years, risk management is I have been taught risk management in my life, like almost at a daily basis. You got to learn how to manage your risks, because guess what? It's risky even when you drive out on the car, right? But you don't think twice when you go drive. You just pick up the car, go with the family and drive.
Right. Very interesting, what you said, and I'm going to come back on one thing later. But just to continue our conversation around food, share with us a little bit about your food brands. What excited you to choose those segments of food? I mean, food itself is an ocean, and we may all have our own preferences, and a lot of our palate is also directed from a perspective of our origins or our demographic or culture. So, would be very keen to understand the different brands that you've established and the reason for each of those brands.
So my first brand that I established was Punjabi, and it was strictly Delhi street foods, because I was missing butter chicken, dal makhni, paranthas, Haryali kebab, tandoori kebab, Peshawari kebab, the nizams, the kathi rolls, Sikh kebabs, Dhuri Sikh, Barra kebabs and all that. And I was missing those, the authentic ones. So I established Punjabi, and that was my first, where I said, we established a WhatsApp group with my friends who were my paying customers. I created a small logo. And off we went running. We did Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays meals pickups, right? Fast forward a couple of years, my families grew, and my dishes went from not just Indian Delhi street foods to now I was offering Mexican and Greek and Thai and Chinese and Mediterranean, like Mediterranean Greek, Mediterranean Turkish, Mediterranean Moroccan, North African Moroccan. because I have traveled a lot, right? So in my earlier experiences, when I traveled and I had all these recipes. So I perfected those. So it kind of grew into a global street food cuisine. And everybody loved it. I mean, it was just phenomenal. People were like calling me left and right. And the funny thing is, they will call me. They know I'm in the kitchen. Then they'll call my wife. Then they'll have their children call my wife. That, auntie, we want it. We want Chef Skylar to do the good. So it's like, okay, good. So that's how we did it. But then, so that was my first brand, Wow Punjabi.
Right.
400 plus dishes, 32 different cuisines. And then ultimately it was like, okay, where am I going here? Because what happened was that, I'll give you an example. I have butter chicken. In America, we have a melting pot, right? So we have the Americans, we have the Eastern Europeans, we have the Indians, North Indians, we have the Indians, South Indians, we have the Indians, Gujaratis and whatnot. So they all have different spice level of sensitivity. So I found myself making, I'm going to make a butter chicken, and everybody loved it. But the Polish and the Eastern European would want like next to no spices. Like for them, even salt would be like, oh, it's too salty. Right. And you have the Punjabi friends who are like, no, I want it like with all the ghee and all the butter and spices going to be, and it's all delicious, So I found myself making those 400 dishes and a lot of permutation combination. I'm like, this is going to stop, because I'm deviating from my passion. And ultimately, I was like, I need to have a mission in life. I need to make sure that I'm doing this for a purpose. And I'm focusing on something, right? So I was also then offering pizzas. I was also offering burgers. I was also offering fajitas and tacos. You know what I'm saying? I would do fusion stuff. I would do Indian tacos with Indian chutneys and whatnot, rather than a fish taco. And then I asked my customers, okay, you know what? I'm sorry, but I cannot just keep on going like this. I can't. I mean, I can hire a bunch of people, but then they wouldn't be as committed in making the authentic food. What is it that you want me to shortlist it down? So we came from 400 dishes to 57 dishes. And from the 57 dishes, we had kebabs, we had burgers, and we had pizzas, Flavors can be anything, but that's what and I said, no, it's still too much. You got to give me one, or at the most two. Right, so they said, no, chef, we love your kebabs, and as much as we can get the dal makhnis and the chicken tikka masalas everywhere, but your kebabs are like authentic. Your pizzas are just phenomenal. So then that's where I established my second brand, Wow Pizzas, so Wow Pizza Rock. So Wow actually stands for Wood Fired Obsession of the World. So it's actually on my logo. And I still was like, okay, I'm going to choose pizza as my food of choice, because it's a million plus combinations. I can still stay true to my global cuisines and offer them on my pizzas. And oh, by the way, now I'm going to make it in a wood-fired oven. And I already had an Italian-made wood-fired oven that people like really liked it. It was like, I got it specially made, had it in my back of the house. I would take it to my customers. So that's where I'd established the Wow Pizza Rock. And I then, worked with the local master crafter in France. I got this huge oven made, which can actually stay hot for 5 days. It can actually stay hot for almost 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's plenty hot. And it can stay hot for 5 days. I got it shipped from Europe. I put it on a mobile trailer. So now I had the ability to actually go to the birthday party to the kids and actually make pizzas on site over there, rather than them coming over here and all that. So that's how Wow Pizzas was established. So fast enough, sure enough, when I was feeding all these people and I was, all these exotic dishes, I actually became overweight. I went and became I was 47 pounds. And that's almost 100 plus kilograms. I became pre-diabetic. So Wow Pizza was good, few years passed by, but then I became overweight. I became pre-diabetic, high cholesterol, triglycerides and whatnot. And I had back issues. I had all sorts of, my muscles started aching. And for 3 years, I actually had I had acid reflux, so I couldn't have like painkillers, especially not like aspirin or something like that, NSAID. So for 3 years, I used to go to a neurologist who would give me shots of muscle relaxation and anti-inflammation on my neck and on my back. And in the 4th year, I was like, this is not going to happen. I do not want to live my life like this, where I'm getting shots and all that. This is a rat race again. I do not want to do this. And now, of course, I have a degree in bioengineering. So at least in my mind, I know the theory, the biology sciences, the physics of the food chemistry and whatnot. I can think on those terms. And that's where I started researching into nutrition, health and wellness. And sure enough, I studied that for almost 3 months, like books. I got 3-4 big books, and they're still in my backyard, in my library. And I love to read. And that's where I'm like, you know what? I could do so many things by making my food healthy. And so I started having more protein-rich diets. And just for me, more fiber, more plants, less carbs, less refined sugars. And quite honestly, in 6 months, I went from 246 to 197 pounds. I lost 50 pounds, almost 23 kgs in 6 months. My sugar went down, my triglycerides went down, my cholesterol went down. And so when my waistline went from almost 46 inches to now almost 39, 38, my customer said, "Chef, why are you losing weight? You should lose the weight, especially for the food that you are cooking." And I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm eating my butter chicken, but instead of having heavy cream, I actually take cashew and then I do this. Instead of having all these sugars, I extract sweetness from apples and peaches and I infuse them in my kheers and my ice cream that, by the way, I'm making for myself. And they're like, you would love to try that as well. So once again, I have a customer who's asking for what I want to do. And that's where, so I took a set of 10 families and I kind of fed them that diet, and they were nice enough to pay me, at least at the cost. And they were like, and there were certain days we just fed them without telling that this is a healthy dish or this is the healthier version. And they were like, this was even more delicious than what you had originally made. And then, so that gave me the concept of, the life meals concept. So that's how my third concept of life meals was born, which was protein-rich, fiber-rich, low carbs, low sugar, all natural, organic, chemical-free. And, when I researched, let's say, big food chain pizza companies, right? So they are using so much of cancer-causing chemicals in their pizza because, to give you an example, to make a good pizza, you need to have a fermented dough ball. Like the yeast has done its work, so it rises. That's where it gives the puffy texture. So because these are, big pizza chains are all production, and they have to have production and capacity and everything. So they use chemicals for those to do that. And those chemicals are carcinogenic agents. And like the NIH, National Institute of Health out here in the US, have published material about them being cancer causing. So to me, that was like shocking. It's like the cheese that I was using openly, they're saying they actually have got wood pulp in it. And I'm scratching my head. I'm like, what? You're having wood pulp in cheese. You're using olive oil, which is so cheap, but it's actually made from the rejected olives from Spain and all that, even though it's Spanish olives. So I think that's where when I started looking at this from a more, then I got really very serious because then I put my bioengineer hat on and I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot of mucking going around in the food. And then that led to my latest, like the Dafyamil life meals concept, which was like all healthy, all of the things that I've been talking for the last 10, 15 minutes, So that's what it is.
Yeah, your website describes you as a maverick, creating guilt-free gourmet delights for the active lifestyle. So explain this to our viewers. You did, share a little bit, but what is, gourmet without the sin?
So for example, like I have a chocolate cake. Like if you go to my blog, chefskylarsolve.com, and you can share that with your listeners, right? So to give you an example, right? So I went to the Chicago pastry school, and I said, I went back to the top head out there and I said, you know what, I want to make a cake or I want to make a pastry, but guess what? I don't want to put eggs in it. I don't want to put sugar in it. And I don't want to put flour in it. And he literally started laughing, like in his Puritan world. And I talked to so many people out here because baking is very big in the United States. It's a lot bigger in the United States than anywhere. A lot of people bake, right? So they started laughing, I'm like, not exactly, right? So like, for example, I make chocolates, but when you look at a chocolate, 90% of it is sugar, additives, like the ones that is commercially available in the store, right? The one that we all want to run away from. So chocolate has got, it actually has a lot of sugar. It's got a lot of dairy additives, and it's got like manufactured, alkalized cacao, whatever powder being used. So basically it's been stripped off of the nutrient elements, right? And so when I looked at it from a bioengineer and actually studied the cacao beans and the composition, I was shocked to find that it actually has got more calcium than spinach or beef. It has got more iron, more calcium. It has got higher antioxidants than, let's say, blueberries, right? And antioxidants we know are anti-carcinogenic agents. So when I went and I talked to the master chocolatiers who were making all this chocolate, and I was like, we got to get rid of all these fake stuff that you're making. It is delicious and it is the commercial stuff. And they started, this guy doesn't know anything. Thank you very much, but you don't waste our time. So that's where I was like, I want to be an independent, Maverick part of it is I want to be independent. I'm going to reimagine this. Right. I'm going to create it from ground up so that person having my chocolate will have the true benefits of a mineral, vitamin, calcium rich food. And it, by the way, it's going to taste just as good, if not better, so that people may come for having its health, but they will stay for the deliciousness. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's how, I started thinking outside the box. I'm like, how can I make this better? How can I really... Now, what I found was that a lot of people would just buy the cacao powder and then they will make it. So I then went to the source. I talked to local people who were importing cacao beans out here. I learned from them how to take the cacao beans, roast it. I had already got wood-fired ovens. I learned the physics of cooking, the chemistry of altering that food, or actually how to not alter that food, and then eventually how to align that with our taste buds and the flavor profiles that we have. And now I make this chocolate, which is completely ground up, which has got hardly any sugar. It's got a lot of fiber-rich protein. And I have diabetics enjoying it. I literally have dietitians who are telling their patients, you can have Chef Skylar's chocolate. Until before the pandemic hit, my sweets, my baked goods, my chocolates were one of the sought after in a lot of the active lifestyle, like gyms and CrossFits and all that. I mean, they're still coming back because of so that's really where, you're thinking outside the box. You're not really following what is being taught to you in the school. You're sticking to the fundamentals of nature. So everybody started saying, Chef, you're a maverick to even have thought of it and then brought it to the market. And now you actually have people buying it. And, so that's really, that's where all of this, and I continue to, kind of find new ways, time permitting.
It's phenomenal. And, what I wanted to ask you, listening to you and this phenomenal journey, and most importantly, the way you have reconstructed, food in your mind and presented to your audience and to your customers. Did you go through any formal training or apprenticeship when you decided to take, food as not only a business? I mean, you could have run it in different ways, but you decided to be hands-on, become a chef. Were there any process of preparation, training, apprenticeship that you took?
So I think that I'm a firm believer that the higher the building has to go, the stronger the foundation has to be. Actually, the deeper the foundation has to be, right?
Right.
I think that, and this is something that I picked up in my engineering, is like I couldn't be the successful engineer if I didn't have the training in the engineering school in terms of the ability to think analytically, right? So I knew that once I decided that I wanted to do this as a career, I just knew that there are a lot of things I knew that I didn't know, but then I also didn't know that I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't know what you don't know, then you're going to get blindsided and you're going to get hit and you don't know. So I went to the Culinary Institute of America. I took a lot of classes over there, more of a vocational. I didn't go to the 3-year program. I just took a lot of classes at CIA. I went to the Chicago Pastry School. I went to a couple of leading baking institutes because you got to learn your fundamentals, right? So you got to learn those fundamentals of cooking, whether it's the physics of cooking or it's the chemistry of food. And they teach those things to you over there, like depending on what classes you want to learn, right? And at what level. And then I actually did some training. I had to let go of my C-suite senior director ego and actually, camp out in restaurants and learn from the chefs and the sous chefs how they're making the food for the customers consistently, how they're making it of good quality. I actually camped out with a bunch of street food vendors across the globe. Like I was for 2 weeks in Athens, so I learned from somebody's grandma to learn how to cook Greek souvlaki kebabs, lamb souvlaki kebabs in Greece. And then I went and learned from somebody on the street food how to make a chicken souvlaki kebab, and then somebody how to make like an octopus, because a lot of seafood, Greece is very famous for its seafood and its feta cheese. So I literally had to go back to the drawing board, learn, and because I thought that if this is something, if I want to give myself the best shot to succeed, right? So you got to be educated in what you're doing. And that's where I'm like, okay, let me just go through it. And then all of a sudden, a lot of the recipes, how they were being structured or being taught by all these YouTube videos and all that, it started making sense to me.
Right.
So, and I'm still learning. I mean, I buy a lot of books. My wife always beats the crap out of me. Why get another book? She's like, now is the time for you to write your own book. Right. I'm like, no, I'm just going to write my blog because they're going to just try to do that. But I think that's where it's important to get a good education in whatever you are serious about doing, because it gives you the good grounding and fundamentals. That's my opinion. And that's how I live it. Other may have a different opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, but very powerful. What would definitely stay behind with me is, when you were explaining that, you have to let go of that C-suite mentality, or maybe for a lack of a better word, or the word that is more prevalent, ego. You have to let it go to get down to the grassroots, to start and think as a beginner. And I think that is very important. Often we overlook that importance of that. And well done, and kudos to you for the way you have been able to shape your mind to become what you are today, and living your dreams. It's not easy. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people dream about it. A lot of people think about it. A lot of people wish about it, and they end up being a wishpreneur. And today, you've been able to break that barrier of your mind and walk into your freedom and living a life that you choose to live, or you choose to live. So wonderful. Well done.
Thanks.
What I wanted to ask you, Chef Skylar, just in continuation to this discussion or conversation, is along the journey, from a successful global consulting career, as you were walking through the alleys towards becoming a chef, were there any moments of self-doubts, or you thought that you made a mistake?
I think that I actually did. I'd be lying to you that, oh shoot, I mean, why did I get into this? It's because that's, I think, the human thing to feel. Like if I was not feeling that, I would say that either I'm too idiot to think like that, because I think that self-doubt is, in my opinion, is good, because you don't feel confident, therefore you have to work on something to become confident. Okay. Right. And I think that to me, it's an important feeling to have, but it's also an important feeling to address.
Right.
Of course, the initial few years are very stressful, right? They were like, oh my God, did we get into this? There were nights where I was sleepless nights. Will the customers come back? Especially in the food industry, right? So if person don't like your food, they are not going to come back.
Right.
And if it's a general, like you go to a restaurant, you don't like it, you're like, and this happens to me, you, anybody, you know what?
Exactly.
I don't like this. I'm never coming back to this restaurant, right? So to me, like, am I going to be good enough to actually, have a consistency that people will come back to me, right? And quite honestly, I still think about that today. But I don't dwell on it and lose on it. I just use that as a driving force to become better at whatever I think I can be. So, for example, I earlier talked about, things you don't know, you can address them. Right. So, if I don't know that, let's say I'm really good at, so for example, right? So I know I'm not very good at making dosas or a lot of the Chinese food because they use all sorts of exotic ingredients.
Right.
And I was like, I tried offering Chinese and I know I don't offer them because I can't get those things. So you know what? We just got rid of all the Chinese food.
Right.
I know I can't make the dosas, even though I can make the dosas, but it's not going to be as good. You know what? I'm going to address it. So but I was, for the longest time, man, I want to offer dosas of my 400 dishes. So I was nervous about it. But then I just, when it was no longer on my menu, and so I used that as a driving force to be better at what I already do. So now I offer pizzas. I have this healthy line of products, and I have a select line of Delhi street food, which I'm pretty confident is actually pretty good. So it's like, no, am I the best of the best? No. But I put in my best and I have enough training. So I think that's where I think, self-doubt is always there. But I try to channel that energy to become better what I can become, rather than just dwelling on it and saying, oh my God, all hell is breaking loose and I need to jump ship. So.
Right. Very well explained. The reason why I asked this is, often we don't probably spend time or look into the process that has made someone successful. We only see the end point and see the success and probably become inspired too quickly without accepting that that path for anyone to inspire a group of people is not easy. It's important to remain human, but it's also important, as you explained, that how do you face those challenges and how do you find a resolution and be persistent and resolute as you scale those challenges. And it's only an outcome. What you've achieved is an outcome. You did not think about it, the day one that you will be the Chef Skylar you are today. You did it because you wanted to do it, and I don't think there was any better reason for you to embark on this journey. And I think that is what I wanted, to share. As I felt, being part of this conversation. And of course, I've seen you, in Manipal very closely. But those were different days, And the reason why I wanted to, dwell on this is perhaps there could be one of our alumni, young alumni, watching this episode, and that person in her or his mind could probably want to do something different. He or she could want to become a chef or a musician or a filmmaker or an artist or whatever, outside the area of probably the core engineering. But the way you shaped it, I think, is a lesson for people to learn and adapt. That you could wish to become anything that you want to be, but it's important you take it pragmatically, practically, and you put a plan behind it and get trained to do whatever you want to choose professionally to go after. Success or failure is a different conversation. It doesn't matter in my books. It's just, one more millisecond or one more second or one more step. And that is important. It's important that we keep working on that thought, and just be human, accept that there could be moments where we may feel we're about to step back, and that is the moment where you need to just take a pause and push yourself. Just stay there, hold your thoughts, hold that emotion, and try to take that half a step, and that will take you towards success. So I just wanted to just share this, because it's very important the way you described your journey, and most importantly the way you shaped your journey and you trained yourself, I think is a lesson for a lot of young people out there to listen, ponder, and perhaps follow.
Yeah, I mean, I think you articulated very well, and now that you're thinking from what I'm just telling my story, and then that's like the way you put it, I think that's actually right. I mean, if I can be part of a 1%, an iota of inspiration for anybody, part of our responsibility as humans, as leaders, in whatever way we are, is to mentor the next generation, is to make sure that people coming into the workforce, or junior or even senior people who are wanting to, like I teach cooking classes, and I have retired people who now want to learn how to cook, and I teach them, right? And if I can be 1% inspiring to them, I would, that is definitely an important thing.
Great, fantastic. I've got probably we're almost to the end of our show. I've got one important question I wanted to ask you, and this is a question that a character in a story from my book, Orange Sky and Blue Sun, asks himself, and I would love to hear your answer. And the question is success happiness, or happiness success?
Okay, let me think about it. So can you repeat the question?
Is success happiness, or happiness success?
So let me think about it. I'm thinking. So I think I'm going to speak for myself.
Yes.
So I would personally think that happiness is success, because when I start on this journey, I literally just had one mission in mind. I want to ultimately make my customers happy and healthy. And therefore, I will have a good night's sleep. And the day I can have a good night's sleep because I have fed my customers the best, the healthiest, most delicious meal, that is my success. Okay? It's not, oh, by the way. Now, if you think about it, it's a very subjective quality. It is not I've opened 5 restaurants, 3 lines of businesses, 5 restaurants, 20 franchises. And that to me is not an objective, money-driven. I'm not defining success as that. And the reason why I'm not defining success as that is because if I have that as a goal, if I have 1 restaurant, I want to do 2 restaurants. If I want to do 2 restaurants, I want to franchise to 10. If I want to do 10, and so at every step, I will be happy, but then I'll again turn around and become unhappy, because now I have something else to achieve. Now I have something else to achieve. And I'm seeking just for myself. And so therefore, you can find happiness and success, but that to me is momentarily, because I did not set out when I started my career in food to have these 3 food businesses. I just wanted to feed people. I wanted to make them happy. The kids eat it. Even if you go to my website, Chef Skylar's wowpizzas.com, I have a 7-year-old who left a voice message. And I have put that voice, I took permission from her parents, and I put that voice message as a feedback on my website. And you should just listen to that. Just listen to the excitement that the 7-year-old has having my pizzas. And quite honestly, I mean, to me, that's success. That is a priceless success. You know what I'm saying? Just to me, it's definitely, I would say it's the happiness, because that is more subjective than, oh, by the way, I got to have all these objective, goals, money-minded goals. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be like, we are not saints and I'm not in charity. I still have bills to pay and I still want to lead a comfortable life. So I don't want anybody to take away that I'm giving away all my bills because I don't have a budget. But I definitely want to make sure that once you have enough, once you have realistic goals in life, once you have what is good for you and your family. Beyond that, for me, it's like, okay, now I want to do betterment of community, and that's ultimately what my happiness is. That to me is success.
Very well said. Very well said. Chef, have you slowed down in life?
That's an overloaded question. I mean, I slowed down a little bit from my cooking because of the pandemic. But I'm ever more charged, especially after the pandemic, to be more, offer more healthier stuff and or more, because now, the one thing what pandemic has done is actually, to me, it has brought humanity together. We have bonded together as humanity, as different countries, that we're going to fight this pandemic, right? So to me, my next goal is, I want to fight this pandemic, but then I want to work with my fellow community members and all that to fight global hunger. I want to fight climate change. I want to do, so I can do that as a capacity in the chef if I, let's say, use more green sources, or I feed people who are not fortunate enough. So to me, from that perspective, I have not slowed down. In fact, I'm just getting started. Right. Because to me, that I think we all have to come together, but from but I'm happy because now I have a framework in mind and I have a chart I have a flight plan going forward that I got to, with the help of food, I'm going to bring people together and I'm going to make them healthier or happier. I'm going to work for them. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to have them work on these causes. So I think that way I'm just getting started.